Following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Come on.
We live in our faith, but under the law. And so we want to share some more information about what's happening in this climate to faith institutions, particularly the Christian church, as well as other churches. And so we want to talk about today, we have our two anchors. They're here every week, and I know you're glad to see them. We have Attorney Rodney Howard, Wilson Howard PC, and Attorney Aaron McLeod, Reverend Dr. Attorney Aaron McLeod from
McLeod Legal Advisors.
And today we're going to talk about, because I keep telling you all, if we think it's just them and not us, we're going to talk about a case that could impact all of us. It's about voting and our right to vote, our access to the ballot. So, Attorney Howard, tell us, what is this case?
Well, this is a case that comes to us out of the state of North Carolina. The case is entitled Riggs versus Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular case, there was an election held in November, along with the presidential election,
Mm-hmm.
for the Supreme Court of North Carolina. And one of the candidates, the Democratic candidate, successfully won election to the state Supreme Court of North Carolina by only 734 votes.
So they challenged him.
They challenged the election results, and the election officials did two canvasses, but the vote did not change, and she was declared to be the winner of the race. So then the Republican candidate, Mr. Griffin, who had already been a state appellate court judge, challenged 65,000 votes of the
When you say
election.
challenge, what does that mean?
He claimed that the election officials did not have sufficient documentation that these voters were legitimate voters.
Oh, boy.
And primarily he challenged the absentee ballot voters, especially those in the military and those living overseas. And as a result, he brought a court case in North Carolina. And in fact, the North Carolina appellate court, his fellow appellate court justices, sided with him and directed the election officials of North Carolina to not declare a winner for this particular Supreme Court race, but to require that all of the challenged voters be given 30 days to supply additional documentation after the election.
Okay. So this case is really serious
It is serious.
because it deals with a lot of stuff.
Well, one of the things it deals with is who gets to decide
to challenge.
who will determine the authenticity of the ballots after they've been cast.
Ballots have already been cast. People have already voted, and so now the guy that loses says, "Hey, this was an illegal election." Basically.
Well, we've seen in the past that some of the candidates of one party, especially, can't accept the results, and when they don't accept the results, they claimed that there was some unfair election activity going on.
So,
In this particular case, the winner challenged the election officials having to send out notices to all those challenged voters, especially because the notices would have to go overseas. The people would have to supply either a passport or photo identification or birth certificates
to prove.
back to North Carolina to establish that they were legitimate voters. And so the winner, Mrs. Griggs rather, indicated that it would cause chaos and confusion, and there was insufficient time to even engage in this activity. The case has been held in limbo. There was an order issued by the federal district court indicating that to maintain the status quo until such time as a hearing on the merits could be held before the federal district court.
So it hasn't been decided.
It has not been decided, but it has great implications. First of all, it's the idea that the documentation for these registered voters was insufficient, and our current president has now adopted the position that he's going to support this kind of requirement of documentation throughout the country. He is trying to issue an executive order to that effect, and there is legislation pending in Congress, the SAVE Act, to also require the same kind of documentation for federal elections. And now our president is arguing that it should also be carried on to state and local elections as well. No voter can vote unless they present the kind of documentation that is required by North Carolina.
What they're talking about is what? A birth certificate and or a passport.
Right.
So how many of you know where your birth certificate is? Because right now, we're going to have to re-register according to the SAVE Act or according to the president's executive order. And this is all a move to control the election. Back in the day, we had poll taxes. We had literacy tests before we could vote. Now, this is challenging your fundamental right as an American citizen, saying that you got to walk around carrying your birth certificate around.
Well, not only
or
that,
a passport.
We also have the idea that voters can be challenged after the election takes place. If you were registered to vote before the election, you were given a ballot based on your registration, and you voted. Now, because someone did not like the outcome of the vote, they are now going to challenge you post-election. This is contrary to everything that we have had in our tradition up to this point.
Well, also they're going to deny people who are overseas representing our country, in the military overseas representing our country. You know, they are legal citizens. Now their votes will be challenged because they don't want absentee ballots. They don't want you to mail in your vote from wherever you are. And they're trying to eliminate absentee ballots with this thing called the SAVE Act, which has not been passed by Congress yet. So what do you think, sir?
I tell you, it gives me great concern because the common denominator is other people affected by this are voters. So there's no protected class for a high level of scrutiny, right? And so
what you had, any voter.
Any voter.
Yeah. There's no differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
And the military people, they over there serving the country,
putting their lives on the line, and they are being told that their votes may not count.
And they're saying you have to have a passport. I don't know. There's a large majority of people that don't even have a real ID, let alone a passport. They don't walk around with a passport. And so It's to discourage disenfranchised voters.
And it will especially impact minorities and people who are less educated, people who don't have access to all this documentation that's being required.
And so one of the things, I don't know, what do you tell churches if this passes? It hasn't passed yet, but it's on its way. It's called the SAVE Act. And then there's this executive order on election. So what do you tell the church? What should they tell their people?
One,
One,
educate them on the issue. Two, I don't even know if the letter writing campaign would even have any bearing on it, but the reality is that
you're gonna write a letter too.
can't do it to Congress and the Senate right now.
Well, no, you should do it
to Congress and
to
Senate.
the congressmen and congresspersons and the senators,
Mhm.
because the legislation that is being proposed, they still have not passed it yet.
Mhm.
And while it's being considered, the American public there should be an uproar as to this kind of shenanigans going forward, this disenfranchisement of their vote.
Fundamentally, we should write those letters. But right now, with the makeup of the U.S. Congress and the Senate, the utility of those letters will not have the effect that it once had.
You gotta write it. You have to write.
You have to write it anyway.
Because it's not about Democratic or Republican. It is about who represents you. You should know everyone has one senator,
So frame
two
the issue.
senators in every state, and everybody has a congressperson that represents you. They should know we want you to resist the SAVE Act, resist the SAVE Act, resist the SAVE Act. Do not vote yes, vote no on the SAVE Act. We want to be protected. You can call them and jam the line.
And to your point, fundamentally, that's what we should do.
We must.
But the utility of that, and I'm not suggesting do not write, but the composition of a legislature at the federal level right now is right leaning. That's all I'm saying.
It's right leaning, but it can lean left if your congressman.
Well, really, we don't want it to lean left either. We want it to lean center because it's everybody's interest. So it's framing the issue.
Well,
Right?
what I'm saying is those Congress people who represent a population that seems to be supporting the SAVE Act, they will change their vote because they're running for office next year.
Yeah.
If they get enough calls and emails from their voters, they don't know what the voters think because the voters don't know that this is happening.
Well, to your point,
Right?
irrespective of who your constituency is, because those who are right leaning will more than likely support it. But what we should do is jam their lines, even if they don't represent us.
Well, I don't even know that even if they're right leaning, that they are aware of the extent to which they can possibly be disenfranchised. If you can do it because you don't like the outcome of the election, then all of the elections become suspect. Every time someone loses, they can challenge the election based on the idea that there's not enough documentation to support the issuance of the registration in the first place.
So we don't have the number, but ask your pastor, your faith leader, to tell you, you should look on your voter registration card right now and determine who your U.S. Congress, what district you live, what congressional district you live in. For example, I live in the 1st Congressional District for Illinois. I know who my congressperson is. It's Jonathan Jackson. I know who my senators are. Every state has 2. You don't have to figure that out. Same 2 represent the whole state. I know who my senators are. The reason we're saying this is because Congress has the balance of power. The president, they have 3 co-equal branches of government. You have the executive branch, which is president. You have the United States Congress, which is the House and the Senate. They have the power to stop the action of the executive branch if it is not favorable to the masses of the people. And you have the judiciary. They can interpret the SAVE Act and say it's unconstitutional.
Well, what you really see here is the executive branch trying to usurp the powers and authority of the legislative branch.
Mhm.
And if Congress allows that to happen,
Mhm.
we won't have co-equal branches. You will have a supreme executive
Dictatorship.
branch, and other branches, especially if they fail to stand up, will be subservient to the executive
You
branch.
And right
move to
now,
a
that's what we have.
dictatorship.
Mhm.
And right now, that's what we have.
What?
We don't have an equal balance of power.
We had an equal balance. We have to exercise our power. We have to pressure.
But right now,
We
do not.
do have
because-
it. We haven't
because-
lost it.
No, we have. Because fundamentally, we haven't lost it. But realistically, right now, we have. Because everybody is within the same party.
It's not the party. You have to keep thinking. People vote their interests.
Mm-hmm.
Elected officials want to be re-elected.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in the House of Representatives will run for office next year.
Mm-hmm.
Will run for re-election. You don't vote them back.
What I'm saying is, my assessment is not terminal. What I'm saying right now, you have a Republican court, you have a Republican legislature, you have a Republican executive branch,
Yeah, but
which can turn at the midterms.
they can turn now. If they see the pressure, the resistance of the people, they will change. If the people remain silent, they say, "Oh, we can go ahead." But if I see the president doesn't want everybody turning against what he wants, if he sees people marching in the streets, if he sees faith leaders, they will change their position.
Well, the president last Tuesday
Said,
issued an executive order that aims to do the same thing that is being done in North Carolina. And he is claiming that he has extraordinary unilateral power and authority to regulate federal elections and usurp the powers of Congress and the states and any independent bipartisan federal election agency.
if that is allowed to happen, you are moving rapidly to a dictatorship.
That's what's happening.
And the only way to stop that is each co-equal branch has to stand on its own and fight any one of them taking control over the other. You cannot let the executive branches make all kinds of rules
And so
that are unconstitutional. It is not the way the Constitution was written.
I agree. We all agree. But what is the motivation for the judiciary right now to do that? I can see the legislature.
They have lifetime appointments, and he's challenging their very authority. When the Supreme Court or federal district court issues a ruling, the president is duty bound to follow the ruling. He can't just say, "I'm not going to do that because I'm the president." That's not the way the Constitution is written.
And right now, there is very little resistance coming from the Supreme Court.
Well,
it's coming at the lower courts at the federal level that's challenging.
If he can control the Supreme Court, then they will not want to be there. They will no longer be necessary.
Well, the other thing is that the Supreme Court becomes ineffective
Mhm.
if it allows their power as Supreme Court to be diminished to the extent that the executive can disregard any decisions that are made by the Supreme Court.
Because they have lifetime appointments. The reason they have lifetime because they didn't want them to be beholden to any president. They don't have to be.
And so are we just now waiting for them to speak up because they're being very dormant?
No, they have to be. They have to see the resistance.
Mhm.
People respond to pressure. If no pressure, there's no response.
Someone said that the Supreme Court justices do read the newspapers
They
Mhm.
do. They
and they understand the public sentiment. The other thing that has to happen, though, is there has to be a outpouring from the masses of the people that they're not going to tolerate that.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of resistance that can bring some results.
And so my question is when have you seen that from any of the Trump appointees? Prior to Trump, I totally agree with you with the diversity of the court. But since his appointees who are traditionally unfit for the role, character as well as education, when have we seen that in the last
Well, all I can do is say
10 years?
when the people move, God moves. And I'm not so convinced that the members of the Supreme Court are lockstep because they are in jeopardy of losing their power at this point,
Mhm.
and they become non-functional. And if he can take control of the judiciary, they don't need a court.
My question to you is, what meaningful opinion have you ever seen come from Clarence Thomas?
He doesn't have a meaningful opinion. But guess what? When the Supreme Court had just ruled in Plessy versus Ferguson,
Mhm.
how did they get? How did Thurgood Marshall and his team get them to rule in Brown? It wasn't a balanced court.
Mm.
You have to make the appropriate arguments, and you have to have struggle on the street.
And you have to press
Press.
for the rule of law to prevail.
Mhm.
And if we don't have the rule of law, then you have anarchy and chaos.
Yeah. And so we have to fight for that and press and inform people. When people are informed, they will react.
Mhm.
And when the people react, you will have some changes. You know what Frederick Douglass said:
Mhm.
power concedes nothing
Mhm.
without a demand.
And the revolution that he was calling for, or that he said that would be needed to effectuate the change, would be bloody.
Well, I don't recommend bloodshed, but I do know that we're in the midst of a fight for our very lives. People are dying because of lack of access to health care.
Yes, they are.
People are being deported illegally. And so we have to fight to preserve our understanding of what America was formed to do. It was not formed to operate like that.
It was not. And I don't, in my commentary, it is to, as you are doing, challenging us to advocate, prick the conscience of people who stand on the sidelines with their hands but beneath their buttocks doing nothing.
Well, I know in Washington there will be
Mhm.
demonstrations. We're going to see
Mhm.
demonstrations happening around the country.
Mhm.
If every state, every city,
Mhm.
every major city starts these demonstrations against the SAVE Act, because it impacts your individual right.
Mhm.
And people also need to go back and read the Declaration of Independence
We the people
and
more
understand
informed and more
the
perfect.
reason why
Mm.
this country was founded.
Mhm.
And it was to throw off the tyranny of a
Mhm.
dictatorial king.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And at this point, we don't want to establish another dictatorial king.
Mhm.
That's not what this country is all about.
Mhm.
We the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect
More
union.
perfect union.
It's not a perfect one. We want a more perfect union to ordain these kinds of
Establish justice, provide for the common defense,
Mhm.
support the general welfare. All those things are
That's what our
required.
Constitution is designed to do. And it's not doing that right now. It's not providing for the general welfare. It's not providing for the common defense when you impose tariffs on countries. America exports more than it imports more than it exports, which means we will be paying more prices for consumer goods. So it's coming down your street. You won't be able to shop at all because everything that you buy will be marked up 25% and more. So we have to resist. We must resist tyranny. We must resist. So give me your last thought.
Well, I think that most people don't know about this situation.
No.
So we have to educate ourselves and educate our
Mhm.
friends and neighbors. And then secondly, we have to take some actions to do the things that are necessary to address our elected officials and representatives. And if protests in the street are necessary,
We gotta go to
we
the
have to
street.
organize those protests and begin that activity as well.
We must stand for justice, stand for right.
Yes, we must do justice, love mercy, and walk and live with our God.
You're just gonna keep repeating that.
I tell you,
You gotta
that's
do
what
something.
keeps me in this
You
Christian
gotta
walk.
do something. You
You gotta do something. Gotta do something.
Every pastor think about what can you
Yes.
do with your congregation. One, inform them about these challenges that are moving on voting rights. And then ask everybody in your congregation to send a post, get some postcards, send a postcard or email to your senator and your senators and your state rep. I mean, your federal
Congressional representative.
congressional representative, and to your U.S. senators and your congressional representative. That's a start. If everybody did that, we just flood them. And if you don't want to write, then let's get the phone number for the United States House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, and dial that. Jam the phone.
And use social media.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can do that. You have the power to say, stop the SAVE Act, stop the SAVE Act. We have the power if you have the faith. I promise you, it will matter. And so we'll be talking at the next week, so that maybe in June, before they go to recess, let's shut them down.
Mhm.
We pay these people. They make a lot of money. They make six figures. So they owe us representation. Right?
They do.
How much does a Congress pay?
I think about $250 plus benefits.
Yeah, they got
at one
benefits you
time.
don't have. You ought to be able to send them a note saying, hey,
Mhm.
get rid of that SAVE. Don't vote no on the SAVE Act. Vote no on the SAVE Act. It's real simple. You don't have to write a dissertation. Vote no. And then ask for a town hall meeting in your area. Call your congressperson, your U.S. senators that you never see. They are 2 senators for every state. Call them. Say, hey, when are you going to come tell us what's going on? We want to know. We need a town hall.
And what is your position
On the SAVE Act. What are you doing to stop us from becoming a dictatorship? Those are the questions you want to ask. We have the power. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, do establish this Constitution. We are the people. You the people.
I am the people.
You the people.
And we're living in our faith
And under the law.
and under the law.
See you next week.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ. WVTC Alsip Chicago and iNet.